I did, let's check the speed here. Folks, I had to change the speed there, go to SLP, not SP. And as you can see, it is being used by the camcorder because you can see the date below. But, you know, earlier I did a almost 50-minute long video on Hamilton 27's little rant that he did on his DA journal, as well as Louis the Hedgehog's response. Well, here I've got a review, if you will, of some sorts by Gameboysage, in case you don't know who this is. Now, before I start, let me say this. Everybody keeps telling me, keeps telling Sage, keeps telling anybody else that we've been targeted and basically called out through a recent video by Melting Man. Well, let me tell you something. Melting Man has a right to say what he wants to say, and if he feels that we're being a little too judgmental, then that's he's got a right to that. But let me say this in defense, though. Melting Man, I respect the fact that you feel some of us sound like we're taking this way too seriously and we're not giving it a chance. The truth is, you can't blame fans, though. Fans that have been longtime fans of the Saturday morning cartoon, you can't blame fans that have been fans of the comic for the past 20 years, when all of a sudden you take characters like a Sally and roboticize her, or you take someone like Sonic, who usually saves the day, you take him, as Hamilton points out, 27, in basically 4 issues to save Sally, restore the timeline, if you will, but then all of a sudden make him look like a fool and an idiot by having Sally get roboticized. So you can't really blame people for being upset. However, where there are negatives, though, Melting Man, there are positives, and this is an example of a positive. See, Gameboysage is among some of those fans that was kind of iffy right now with Ian. But after reading the latest issue, they feel as though he's on the right track. They only have one problem, and that's going to be addressed here in a minute. So, again, I thought I'd get that out of the way to let people know that Melting Man has a right, as anybody else does, to say what he wants to say. Whether we like it or not, whether we like being targeted or not, he has a right to say it. And, you know, but in defense, Melting Man, you can't blame anybody for feeling that way. You can't blame some fans for feeling that way. It'd be like, let's say, somebody took something that you're a fan of, a character you're a fan of, and all of a sudden did the same thing that happened to Sally, or they took the hero of a franchise you're a fan of and made the hero look like an idiot. Kind of get what I'm saying? Anyway, like I said, where the positives are, there are negatives, and this is a positive right here. This is Gameboysage's review of Sonic 236, and Gameboysage talks at first about the reboot that's been rumored by Sega of America. And this is Gameboysage, again, like I said. This is off the DA Journal. Link will be provided down below. It was submitted 3 hours ago, 3.5 hours ago, basically. So here we go. This is, like I said, Gameboysage's review of Sonic 236, as well as they start out by talking a little bit about the reboot. Now here's what they say. Here's what they say, and I quote, this is Gameboysage, and I quote, "With news spreading that Sega plans to reboot the entire Sonic video game franchise, I can't help but wonder what this means for the comic. For those that don't know, well, nothing is official yet. Sega let it be known that they are considering starting from scratch with the Sonic games, with only the returning feature for sure being Sonic and Robotnik fighting their internal struggle, even though they might go through a redesign. This means characters such as Tails, Amy, and Knuckles are all on the chopping block. It may not exist anymore once the reboot happens in 2014, if it happens. If it happens, key words. It almost makes me wonder if some of the things going on in the comic right now was a way to make it more video game friendly, so that some of the comic originals could appear in the new games, like the Mecha Sally arc most likely being done to get Sally fully clothed at the end of it. And they say that in apostrophes, in apostrophes, saying like the Mecha Sally art, mostly likely being done to get Sally fully clothed at the end of it. One thing that Gameboysage still feels is going to happen, and honestly, like any other fan, you can't blame them. It would be pretty funny to start seeing comic originals in the reboot, though, if that's the route they take, and if the comic itself doesn't get rebooted along with the games. LOL, laughing out loud. Obviously nothing is official yet, but it's still something to keep an eye on for sure, and that's a good point. Even though nothing is official, we still gotta consider that something like that, could happen in the near future. I mean, I did a video about it. You can check that out, and I might send that to Gameboysage so they can check it out too. Now, continuing on with Gameboysage says here, and I quote, "But enough talk about the possible reboot for now. Let's talk about the comic meant to be a stepping-in point for new readers. Our comic starts with Robotnik attacking a town called Furville, and saying he will roboticize those he captures and legionize those that are still immune to it. Of course, what he doesn't mention is that the roboticizer is still busted from earlier events, and that the death egg is dangerously low on power and supplies. However, Robotnik wants to set an example and wants to assure that no more heroes pop up, so he decides to make Furville the example to the rest of the world." So in other words, right here, from what I can tell from what they've read, Robotnik's taking, let's say Patterson, California's Furville, right? Basically, Patterson, California, even though it's a small town, would be used as an example to the entire world that, hey, I'm in charge, I run things, and I'll make an example out of all of you if that's the case. Now, continuing on Gameboysage's review, back at Freedom HQ, we find Sonic reminiscing about what Scourge told him a while ago, in which all it would take is one bad day to turn Sonic into him. While he's buried in his thoughts, Amy and Tails come in and want to know what Sonic plans to do about getting back Bunny, saving Sally, helping Nicole not be so hated, etc. Sonic's response? He's given up. Evil has won. The Freedom Fighters are done for. Until Amy and Tails slap him into shape and point out that no matter how bad it's gotten, Sonic has never given up before, and he put this in apostrophes, or whatever you want to call those little those smiley things, with Amy with a rather angry and evil face, I might mention. Sonic mentions that they're right and that he's never given up, but instead needs to think of a new way to save the day. Until Rhoda comes in and tells him the news that he's not part of the council anymore, and that Nicole has been officially exiled from the city, much to Tails' shock that his own mother would do something like this. And that again is in the half-smiley things. However, what this means is that Rhoda is now back in action, is willing to fight the fight again. Back in Furville, we see the Mobians being rounded up by Sally and the egg swap bot goons, and tossed into cages that look exactly like the cages in the old Sonic games, with Robotnik commenting how refreshing it is that he can do his evil deeds with no freedom fighters to get in the way. Back in the city, Sonic and Rhoda go to the council and explain they want to create two teams, Team Freedom and Team Fighters. Sonic's team will leave the city to rescue Sally, while Rhoda's team stays at home and protects the kingdom from outside forces. The council is skeptical until Rhoda shows that his nanite suit now is in his hate? I don't know. I guess now in his control, and he can call it out at a moment's notice. In a moment's notice, basically Rhoda's saying, hey, you know that nanite suit I have? I don't have to worry about, I can control it now. I have control. Okay. And he can call it out at a moment's notice to help support his crippled back and not only lead the new team. Support his crippled back and not only lead the new team but fight alongside it. Naugus is quick to deny the creation of these teams, but the council reminds him things are done by vote, and to his annoyance, everyone else on the council votes for both teams to be created, with Hamlin happy they went through the proper channels to be created. Now what this tells me, and figure this out, we'll find out about this later, is Nagas is kind of like old school. It's like, he's the king, he feels, hey, I'm king, I should have the final say. And that's about it, you know. Just like before the council was, you know, created, the king's always made the king or the queen always made the final decision, and that's what he feels should be done. He should be the one that has the final say. Now, continuing on, and I quote Gameboysage's review, back in Furville, we see our three heroes, Sonic, Tails, and Amy, arrive, along with Tails' Robodog, and start fighting back. Robotnik is outraged that Sonic still has his spirit, and Sonic says that no matter what happens and who gets taken out, Sonic will always bounce back to fight him off. Even more than this, upon seeing Sally ready to fight again, Sonic says that he can no longer go easy on her, and that if he has to, he will beat her up if it means he can finally save her. Now, another review is very similar to this, where they point out that Sonic realizes he's got to do what it takes to save her, just like she did to save him when he was roboticized. Okay, what was it? Alright. Upon seeing our heroes in action, the citizens of the city get their spirit back and fight back, and Robotnik is forced to retreat, taking Sally with him to refuel at his Shamazon base. Sally retreats using her tactical skill to escape from our heroes, and Sonic helps take out the last threats, saying they know where to go next. Back home, we learn that Team Freedom will be made of Rotor, cream, and cheese, Big the Cat, Hershey, and Bomb. Not Hershey, but Heavy and Bomb. I'm sorry, my bird distracted me in the background, my bird. But back home, we learned that the Team Freedom will be made of Rotor, cream, and cheese, Big the Cat, Heavy, and Bomb. Knuckles belittles them in front of the people until the Tails doll that Cream's mother is holding starts glowing and a nanite building starts to crumble. Due to the other three mines in Naga's mine, he is unable to do anything, leaving the new team to save the citizens from the building. Nagas tries to blame this on Nicole, but with her exile, Rhoda points out that it's probably due to her not, and Gameboysage capitalizes this, not being there that this happened. With the citizens cheering for the new team, Nagas leaves with an evil smile, thinking of how he plans to destroy the council and make the citizens more obedient. In other words, there's your answer to right there. Basically, Nagas old school, Nagas being old school says, you know what? I've got to get rid of this council, and I'm going to make these people more obedient. All right. Now, Gameboysage's thoughts on this issue. And I quote, this is Gameboysage's thoughts on this issue, and I quote, "My thoughts on this issue? It was awesome. Plot, glorious, glorious plot. After half a year of the equivalent of our heroes running around a small minefield and setting mines off with varying results, the story is finally picking up again, and we get to see the constructive stuff happen again, and what I would have liked to see start months ago." In other words, with this issue, Sage is just happy that things are starting to pick up instead of be the way they were. And I quote Gameboysage again, continuing the thoughts. There were no forced plot points, no plot holes. It was all good and exciting adventure all the way. Just like I said in my 235 review, I think I'll have much less to worry about with the comic anymore. And I'll start to full out enjoy the comics again. However, just to point out one thing, the issue did point out something officially that was one of my biggest annoyances in the past. It was made official that nobody at all cares about Rotor using a nanite suit, and one created by Nicole to boot. Okay, here you go. This being the case, why couldn't Bunny get a nanite suit instead of her being completely useless in 234 and then sending her fleeing from the kingdom and her coma-stone husband, or coma-stas husband, or coma-induced husband, we should say, husband. One of the best excuses was the citizens wouldn't allow or like it, but we just learned that nobody cares at all about it and even seem to like it. It would have been very easy to put it in a line from Rhoda like, I ordered the nannies to copy the specs of my suit only for Bunny's size. Or, I had Nicole design this for you to get her mind. I had Nicole design this for you to get her mind. This for you to get her mind off of recent. Or, I had Nicole design this for you to get her mind off recent events. But instead, she was made totally useless and ran away without telling anyone. Really, the bunny thing is the last remaining thing I have an issue with now. But hopefully Ian Flynn can give is a much more Flynn can give is a much more creative continuation of her story than she ran crying to her uncle and legionized herself. However, I'll leave it at that and let it play out. All in all, though, this was a very well done issue and I greatly enjoyed it. It was great to see Rhoda back in action, Nagas actually losing footing with the council, and the people seeing our heroes actually leaving the city and getting stuff done again. Keep it up, Flynn. If the rest of the issues go along these lines, this could turn into a fun ride indeed. So yeah, like I was mentioning to Melting Man and to anybody else listening, what are negatives, there are positives with these people. Where you find a negative with someone like Sage, there's a positive. Where you find a negative with me, there's a positive. Now, for someone like Gameboysage, who, ironically, I have teamed up with Jay Foxfire and Laser X5 and Jonathan 83X as the anti-Ian Flynn alliance in my WWE 12 game. That's a game though, WWE 12. This is kind of a surprise for Gameboysage, because Gameboysage, like everybody else, well not everybody else, but some fans have had their issues and now feel as though these issues may be resolved. Now, we pretty much have a feeling that Sonic, Tails, and Amy are going to just keep following Robotnik, Eggman, wherever he goes, until they get Sally back, or at least restore her free will. Now, the way I look at this, even though I have not opened my issues yet, the way I look at it like this, is like this. Sonic, they are going to get Sally back, but it's going to take one of two things. They're either going to get her back, well, hopefully before 250, free will-wise, but this is what I see happening. Now that I think about it, Sage says the only problem they have left is the bunny deal. What would surprise me is if Ian Flynn, I'm not saying he's going to do it, but I think it would be probably the best thing he can do, is if Ian Flynn has him going to where Bunny went, which is Sandblast City, where her uncle is and all that, and Sally's there along with Robotnik, and Sonic and the others are meeting up with them to confront them, and they see Bunny getting ready to be legionized, and perhaps seeing her best friend probably start sacrifice her own body to be legionized, maybe a part of that will wake, maybe that'll wake a part of Sally up. I'm just saying, if she sees Bunny willing to legionize herself to fight Robotnik. And maybe, let's say, maybe a Legionnaire gets blown up, and maybe part of that will wake her up too. I don't know. So, but that's just my thoughts on the whole situation with Bunny. I don't think if she is legionized, like I said, I think it's going to be a positive thing. But then again, her not being legionized might be due to the fact that upon seeing it happen, it might wake a part of Sally back up and help obtain her free will for her. But that's just my thoughts. And that was Gameboysage's review of 236 and the thoughts at the beginning of the possible reboot. So comment down below, tell me what you think. I'm going to let this battery charge. Peace out.